what?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let's do it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. And we have a lot to talk about and a very, very, very special guest. Martin, would you please do the honors before we get started?
Absolutely. We have one of my favorite gentlemen out here covering women's basketball, the WNBA, but also the NBA. He does an incredible job writing, tweeting, covering. I don't know how he knows how much he knows about basketball, but I'm getting ready to find out. He's the host of the They've Got Now podcast, which he does a phenomenal job on. The one and only Mark Schindler is here to join us on Protect Our Queens.
Let's make it happen, man. Can't wait.
Protect our queens.
No matter what it takes, we must protect our queen.
I just love playing the game. It's fun.
I'm reacting on what the defender does.
There is no shot on the floor that she can't hit.
Yeah, I think I've always just been able to get downhill. So I've sort of prided myself on that.
I know what I'm doing. Like, people can't tell me I'm not doing the right, I've been taught the right way.
Mr. Mark Schindler, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I appreciate you guys having me on. I love the intro music, by the way. I always love me some nice beats that are kind of, you get some deepness to it, but it's also it's just a good flow. And I don't know how else to put it. I like it.
Thanks, man. We appreciate that. Your intro music on your podcast isn't too bad as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just finished listening to your episode with my girl Hannah, which was awesome. You always do a good job, but Hannah's I'm a little biased towards Hannah. I'm from New Jersey. I covered her in high school stuff, so I'm really high on Hannah. But that was an awesome conversation. You always do a great job.
Yeah, no, she's gonna be dope. I was out here. I'm still here right now in South Bend. I just came through I'm working on a feature around the team and. So yeah, getting to see, obviously, it's you get to watch somebody so many times playing, overseas or playing whatever. But then again, like getting to watch practice, see things go on in practice, and I don't know. I'm so excited for the season, man. Like obviously, we still have the WNBA Finals going on. Could still be going on until right up until non-con just about. It's kind of wild to think about. We're already we're a month, slightly less for some of the non-con games, which is absurd, but yeah, man, Hannah's gonna be special. Not to just go on a whole rant and tangent, but I think people get an idea of what a freshman can be, and they're oh, she could be pretty solid, she'll have an impact. I think she's gonna be a special freshman. She's not just going to be good. I think she's gonna be great. I was talking to Neil Ivy the other day, and she said that she has already been a program changer and somebody who she views as a long-term program changer. So just for reference for people who are not you guys who have that kind of insight on Hannah, that's the kind of player that's coming in here. So I can't wait, man.
Well, we look forward to having you back on at some point during the college season because the college season is going to be awesome. We can't wait for that too. But Mark, we usually start the show with our guests. We've had a few guests on, some that I think you're pretty familiar with, Michaela Blakes, Keomi McMiller, people like that. And we usually start the show by saying we must protect our queen, our special guest, because we usually have a female guest on. Now, I won't have to say that for you. The truth is, Mark, you're part of the Protect Our Queens family because Marcus, this brother right here, like I said, I don't know why he knows how much he knows about basketball, but the way he tweets, the way he writes, this guy knows his stuff, and I just appreciate the love and respect he shows to the women's game, which is what this is all about, right? So it makes sense that we would have brother Mark here on the show tonight.
Of course, and Mark, you'll learn, of course, at the course of the show very quickly. Martin is definitely the level-headed of the two when it comes to protecting queens. I take a very violent approach, sometimes too violent, but it's okay. It's okay. It comes with the territory. There's a lot to talk about tonight, and so we want to get right into it. Of course, Mark, we're going to ask the first question to you and have you get us started. It was announced kind of unofficially earlier last week, but then officially on Thursday last week that the WNBA is expanding for the first time since it added the Atlanta Dream, and it's headed to the Bay. The Golden State Warriors have been granted a WNBA team, and that team can start playing in the league as soon as 2025. Mark, what's your reaction to that? How do you feel about that? What should we expect? What should fans expect come 2025 when it comes to the WNBA heading to the Bay?
Yeah, I mean, this is huge. It goes without saying. I think part of what is really interesting, at least from what I've noticed, a lot of people in my generation. So like I was born in 1997, so like obviously like right when the league starts, right? And I feel like I always had a background understanding the league. I always knew about Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, but I didn't know about a lot of the legends of the game because when I was coming up, it was once we started hitting the mid to late 2000s into the early 2010s, where even though the basketball was still phenomenal, that's where we started to see a little bit of the dip down in attendance. And I think part of what's so exciting about what this is I think that this is set up so much better, at least from my looking back and seeing what things were like then to now. I think this is set up to be like very long term. Like, I mean, obviously, like, you never know how long an entire league's going to last, but like, I think the whole idea here is like, it has taken a long time. I've never really gotten to witness expansion in my lifetime, like memorable lifetime, I should say. Like, I feel like this is number one for me. It's just about like, this is going to be long lasting. This is an incredible ownership group that gives a shit. Sorry, I didn't think of much. That cares. That like, I think I saw some people like, oh well, they're getting like their used arenas and stuff. Like the arena just got updated recently because I believe they're gonna be playing at Oracle. Like yes, it's a little bit older, but it's a really nice arena. The facilities they're going to be using are fantastic, like state of the art stuff that is going to be right up there automatically with the top of the top in the league. And I think this is just again like another stepping stone towards pushing everyone else to another level. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff we can talk about on what that fallout might be. But I think that was kind of my first thought. And like, hey, I mean, obviously it's just awesome, but that like, especially like noting like, yes, it's taken a while, but this is why they wanted to have an ownership group that was serious, that was going to put in the funds and the effort necessary to make this long lasting.
And just on the topic of expansion, this is a little off topic, but just on the broader subject of just expansion of the W and of the league. When you look at the next couple of drafts that we're all looking at that are highly anticipated, the talent, the players that are coming out, and you think about the dynamic of NIL and just Angel Reese, the fame, the power that's now coming with not just the talent. I mean, the talent is growing and developing at a rapid pace, but now it's also the fame and the attention. And one of the things I can't wait to see is how that translates into the W at the next level. So as the league expands with more teams and more everything, what are you seeing and sensing in terms of how ready the league is for this talent that is coming their way in the next few years?
That's such a good question, man, because that's something I've thought about a lot. And I talked about this. I did a bigger feature on DeWanna Bonner that came out recently. And I talked about this with her because she was like point blank. She was like, I don't think that I could come up in what this era is now, like in being a star and having to handle social media because it's just different. Like we mentioned Hannah off rip. And to her credit, like I think part of what's so fascinating about Hannah, like she is one of the most cerebral 18-year-olds I've ever met. Both in how she sees the game and just her perspective in general. But like, she's been a star since she was in middle school. And like, obviously like every player in the W has been a high level player since they were 10 or 11, with a couple of exceptions. But the difference is like, okay, Hannah's been blowing up on TikTok and IG and Overtime since she was that age. And I think like, even like you can talk about like players who are freshmen, sophomore in college, sophomore, juniors in college right now that were at that same level, but didn't have that same kind of built-in fandom coming in. And part of it too is like, obviously she has a very flashy game. So that plays a part, but like you mentioned, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, because I think that's going to drastically change how coverage goes. I think we're going to see more stuff transition towards how it is with the NBA. And I wonder, like, not that it's a bad thing. I think growth is good. But it's definitely going to be an adjustment period, because I do think in some ways, like, we'll have people who come in much more media ready, but also I wonder like necessarily what that means in some ways. Because like just in general, like you're going to come up a little bit more guarded when you've dealt with that since such an early age, I'd imagine. So it's good stuff, but I think, especially when you start talking about something continuing to grow and expand, like that's the stuff that's going to come along with it.
On that same note of being ready, right? Obviously, owner Joe Lacob, who is, of course, the owner of the Golden State Warriors, who's been on a kind of dynastic run over the past couple of years in the NBA, he made a very bold statement during the opening press conference that this team would win a championship within the first 5 years. And at first, you think that's a pretty crazy thing to say, but when you couple what Martin talked about as far as like the college players coming out that time, but also I think another point that's worth mentioning is there's a lot of high-level players who are not signing long-term contracts because a new collective bargaining agreement for the WNBA is going to kick off in that 2025 season. So it seems like the stars are aligning. How much would you say that also plays into part to not just the readiness for this team, but also to the point that Joe made in that opening presser, like the likelihood that they do in fact win a championship within the first 5 years of existence for them?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting thing. Like I was pretty taken aback that was the automatic thing. Like that's not, I mean, like having seen Joe Lacob for years now, I'm not super surprised that he said that after sitting on it. But it is like that's a big statement to come out and make, because like you think about any team that's ever been an expansion team in any league. Like I think right away about the Vancouver Grizzlies, like when they first came up and how much of a struggle it was for them to get off the ground. But again, like it's different because I think so much of what will be fascinating with that is how do the next year and a half / 2 years of teams being like, hey, we have to up our ante, we have to improve, and we have to make our infrastructure that much better. Because I mean, I think we're already getting to the point now where once that team is added, we're 4-5 teams, because obviously Liberty, Aces, Seattle, and now this Golden State team are all going to have their own facilities. If your team does not have their own facilities, you are at a disadvantage, like point blank period. Like there are obviously some fantastic organizations that don't, but I think at this point, especially with that team announcing, you're behind the eight ball. Like people would love to live in the Bay Area. Like obviously there's a lot more that goes into free agency than just that, but for people who are serious about winning and building their legacy, like having those kinds of accommodations is huge. So again, I think it just goes back to that being substantial. What will be, again, interesting is like what happens in the CBA. How does that change things? I'm going to be really curious to see how aggressive they are in hiring people. Like, are they going to hire a coach? Like, I'm not they're going to hire somebody right now, but like, I feel like, especially when you're building a team, you would kind of like to have a coach built in around the same time as a GM, or, president, however that the front office is set up. That's going to be really interesting to watch. And especially too, like, are they going to bring over people from their NBA side? Is it going to be more people who've been in the W? What is that going to look like? Because that team is just they don't have ties to the W like that. So it's going to be really trial and error. And what's so fascinating is like they could have 8 million different outcomes. Like I don't think it would be crazy if they really hit the ground running. And I think it's probably more likely that they win if they don't get a draft pick that's crazy high, or I'd imagine, especially like looking at the last couple of teams that have won, like building through free agency is, I don't want to say it's necessarily the way. Like obviously the Aces, when you look at, the Aces needed 3 number 1 draft picks to get this spot. And that doesn't denigrate what they did in terms of building. That's more just like, that's how hard it is. And you have to hit on every pick too. And then, the Liberty are like one of the first teams we've really seen that was built like this in free agency. And a lot of that was because of everything they did to build up infrastructure wise. So really long-winded way of saying, like, I think it's possible, but it's just going to really count on how things align throughout.
Yeah, I've seen people campaigning for like some players. I think Chelsea
Gray, yeah.
So there could be, and being affiliated with the Warriors, there could be a lot of incentive for players to say like, hey, sign me right up. I want to go there and play right away. So I think there's a lot of appeal there. It's going to be really interesting right away.
Definitely.
And I just also wanted to another thing that I thought was interesting is when you look back to when we saw a lot of teams. Mark, you mentioned earlier how like around the 2010s things started to decline. That was right around the time when the WNBA changed the way they were structured and made it so that NBA teams couldn't necessarily like have their own team. And we saw a lot of the teams that a lot of people love, like the Soul and the Fire and the Shock and teams like that, kind of either move or go defunct because independent ownership groups couldn't fund the teams anymore. With the Warriors now getting a team again, or for the first time, and this being another NBA team that has a team, do you think this opens the door for more NBA teams either to bring back a team that we saw before, or also in a situation like, say, Toronto, for example, maybe get a team there that's never been there before?
Yeah, that's something I haven't really thought about too much. Like, I think it's definitely possible. Like, there are teams that have like quote unquote ties, like the Mavs and Wings are loosely adjoined. I don't know how deep that really runs. I don't think that it's anything wild. But they do definitely do stuff like hand in hand. Like, I know like Satu has worked for the Mavs and in doing some stuff like around their corporate sales, and just doing stuff to have like, so she could stay in Dallas and like still be working around and stuff. And I know they've done that for a couple other players. But as far as like, obviously I think the Liberty and the Nets are probably the closest right now. Obviously Clara Tsai and Joe Tsai are hugely around that team. And obviously I think a lot of it just ties back to everything being in Barclays and how that plays out. But I mean, I think it's definitely possible that we see more of it, especially, I mean, like, yeah, because the Pacers are still it's Pacers Sports and Entertainment still with the Fever, but it all just depends on how connected it is. So I mean, it's certainly possible. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with that, though.
Can we talk about the finals?
It's time to talk about the finals. Yeah, it's time to talk about the finals. Yeah.
Mark, talk to me, dog. Listen, I don't have a horse in this race. I don't have a fan, but I made my prediction in the I do.
Why?
Fan sense. Like, if the Liberty lose, I'm not going to be hurt. Like, I don't really care. Okay,
I'll be hurt if the Aces lose. But
yeah, you will. You have a horse in this. I don't. I just based on what I see with my eyes. I don't care. I'm not emotionally invested. I just invest based on my pick. So first day of the season, I picked the Liberty. I said, yo, the sum of their parts, it's going to come together. Positional fit, versatility. I liked everything I saw. And I'm like, that's the only team that can beat the Aces in a series. That's the only team that's built to do it. And I went ahead and I said, you know what? Sabrina's coming into the season healthy, unlike last season. They still have Naj. They still got, they have Marine, which people are still finding out about. I don't know how, because I've been screaming her names at the Raptors for the last 2 years, hoping people know about her. I just love the roster. And I'm like, that's going to, if Jonquel gets in rhythm and in shape, if they hit their scariest form, I'm like, that they can take them out. So I just went on a limb. I said, they're going to win their first ever title this year. Now, I understand what they're up against, and they got the full force of it. 99 points in game one of a finals is absurd. It's absurd. I'll leave it to you, but this is how I see it for game two. I think the Liberty will play better. I mean, guys, this was a 1-point game late in the third quarter. The Aces pulled away, but like for 75% of that game, they were neck and neck. So and based on the regular season too, we know the Liberty can play with them. But in a finals atmosphere, Aces threw the first blow. They've been here. They're defending champs. They've got a little more chip. Liberty have to respond. I just want to finish my point. I want to make this about two people, Sabrina and Sloot. Listen, we know where the disadvantages are. We know they're going to struggle. I do think, though, Mark, based on what I saw, I watched every dribble of that game. Based on what I saw, Sloot, her first few looks, she hesitated. She had a couple that went in and out, like the look she usually gets. She missed the running look off the top of the key coming off that brush screen. She missed one. She got one blocked, but then she started hesitating. Like, the Liberty needs Sabrina or Sloot to hit shots. They need them to hit threes and early on, so they're in rhythm and they have some kind of rhythm. They got none of that, and to me, that was the big difference for the Liberty in game one. What they were really missing. What are you looking at? What are you kind of expecting for game two based on what you saw in game one?
Yeah, I think part of what was really tough because, like you said, I mean, that entire first. I mean, they were up 3. I was doing a preview for game 2 this morning. I was like, they were up 3 at the end of the half. It doesn't feel like it. Um, and I think my biggest thing is going to be a couple of things. Number one, their defense just has to be so much better. I think Sloot and Sabrina just got destroyed on defense, and it wasn't just them. To be fair, I think the entire team, like rewatching some of the game today, when I was writing that piece on Jackie, like I think overall their communication was tough. But I think it goes back to like they were just a half step behind the Aces, and I think to me it almost ended up more about like the Aces were just phenomenal offensively. Like I think in some ways the Liberty almost overthought what they wanted to do defensively. Like going back and watching, like John Quell is standing underneath the rim, sagging off Kia, which I get, but also I think as we saw in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and throughout this year, like when teams just completely leave Kia unguarded, that gives the Aces time, and that's all they need. Because all right, if they can handle the blitz / trap that you throw at them, which for the most part they're probably the best team in the league at doing. They just move the ball too fast to give up an open flare screen on the back end, and that happens so often. And so I think that'll be cleaned up in this next game. But my thing's just going to be more about like as much as like I normally am so against the grain of just making things about one-on-one, but with this team, the one-on-one matters. Like they have to find a way to stop Jackie because they had no answer for her in game 1. And part of it too is like they were just on their back foot once Jackie really got going. It was like, oh shit, like she's hot. We're kind of just scrambling to make things happen. And they toggle through like, okay, well, we're just going to switch on her. Well, we mistimed that, or we miscommunicated it, and Jackie's going to can the wide open 3. Or okay, we do switch this right, and then she's going to do a quick give and go with Chelsea. And they did that 2 or 3 times. I was like, we can't switch that anymore. And then we're like, all right, well, we're going to blitz this. And Jackie made the pass. Chelsea was wide open. Bang. And that was the run. And then it hit a point too. It's like, okay, well, we're going to try picking her up 94 feet. And then she just dribbled right through and passed Courtney Vandersloot, scored at the rim. Like, I think they have to do whatever they can to make it so that she can't rip and run. And also anything they can do to slow the pace, which is like, it seems detrimental considering how much that was their bread and butter this season. But like, I think they did too much trying to match what the Aces bring, and they just don't have the guards to do that. I honestly would look to see my big, like, I feel like this has to be a Kayla Thornton series. Like she only played 4 minutes. I thought she was solid in the minutes she played. Granted, like it's just 4 minutes, but like in terms of just having her size, having somebody else who can guard Jackie and Chelsea, because that's the quandary. Like you can't just have Benijah as your ball stopper when it's Chelsea and Jackie, because I don't think you can be like, well, let's take Benijah off Chelsea and put her on Jackie, because then you create all these other problems with Chelsea getting in the paint and getting her shot off and creating from there. So I think this, to me, like as much as they need to get Courtney and Sab going, like I think that this is like we need Kayla to play a big role in this.
I looked at the Aces side of things, and Martin and I had a long conversation, as long as we could, because we had a guest on the show last week. We had a lengthy conversation last week about what we needed to see from each team to be successful. And the one thing that we both talked about was the backcourt matchup. And I'm a fan of the Aces. I love the Aces. I've watched every dribble of Aces basketball from the beginning of the season up until now. The one thing that I don't think I necessarily anticipated was this to be the Jackie Young game. I didn't expect 26 points, 5 boards, 4 assists from Jackie Young. I expected her to play good. I didn't expect her to be the best player on the floor. When you looked at what you saw from Jackie Young, I know you talked about this a little bit just now, but when you looked at what Jackie Young did specifically on the floor Sunday afternoon, what is it about Jackie Young's game that makes it so difficult for the Liberty's backcourt to adjust to that and handle that defensively?
Yeah, it was to me, it's with where she's at right now, it's the versatility combined with the versatility of her skill set and her athleticism mixed in with how quick she's making decisions now. Because like last year, and I talked about this with her recently, like she talked about the biggest thing she worked on this past offseason coming into this year was reading closeouts, because she like laughed about it. She's like, I'd never had to do that before. It seems simple, but like I just never gotten closeouts consistently like that. And so the biggest thing this year is like, okay, well, if you short close on her, she knows what to do. If you close hard on her, she knows what to do. If you send more aggressive schemes, she knows what to do. If you go over a screen, RIP to your defense. So it's like hit this point where like she's always been somebody who's smart with the ball, who reads the court well, who has good vision. But now it's like because of what her shot has brought, because of the confidence she has in it and how aggressive she is getting it off, she just kind of has the entire court at her fingertips. And she's so strong, but also extremely quick. And it's just like, unless you have somebody who can really staple themselves to her for 94 feet for an entire game, there's not really a perfect way to guard her, because the Liberty, it seemed in watching like they were just kind of comfortable in giving up threes early from her, and that was a mistake.
Right.
At least in my estimation, like maybe, you know, again, if she goes 0 for 4 in the first half, maybe we feel differently about it, but I still think she's taking those shots in the second half, and that's why it matters. But yeah, I think that's the difficulty. Like, she's 6'1", maybe the most balanced player in the league, and has a really good handle and is continuing to get more aggressive as a passer too, because she has awesome court vision. It's just like she is like very much, I want to make the right play. I don't want to turn the ball over. And like Becky Hammond said in post games before, like, no, I want her to make the turnover sometimes. Like, just make the hard pass. And yeah, she's just at a level now where like, I don't want to get like too over the top with it, but like, I mean, she's comfortably a top 10 player. And I think she's going to be an MVP in the league someday. Like, I think she's been that good. Like, I think it was Lexi Brown tweeted about like, what is it going to take for a guard to win MVP? And I think like Jackie's the player to me that could do it in this current class, with how good she is on both ends of the court and how good she keeps getting.
Well, the 3-point shot, Mark, to me, that really separates her. And even watching her throughout the year, you know, you don't want to, and I hate it when coaches throw that with the word out, and you know what I'm going to say when I say this word. But I found myself saying it watching the game. Jackie takes a couple shots, and I'm like, again, I know she'll take it contested, she'll take it off the dribble. I'm like, I know she's got the pull up three, but based on the matchup, I'm like, is she settling? Is she settling for the three? I'm like, based on the matchup, should she be getting to the paint every single time? I'm like, man, is she helping the Liberty by taking these shots? Now, if she hits them, then it's like, now it's really pick your poison, and you're just at her mercy. But I'm watching and I'm like, but when she gives you that balance, the fact that I saw your tweet, the fact that she shot 84% at the rim this season. So the fact that a player, Marcus, who shot 84% at the rim during the season can also hit 5 threes in game 1 of a finals game. Yeah, that and look, that's the problem with the Aces, is that I didn't even know Kelsey Plum had 26. I was looking back at today. All of it out of no. Kelsey Plum got 26. She didn't even play that well. I'm just like, what?
Well, that's the thing with Kelsey Plum, and that's what makes it, again, as a fan, that's what makes things so frustrating watching Kelsey Plum play basketball, because I want to make it like Kelsey Plum is good at the game of basketball, but Kelsey Plum also, I think sometimes, I don't know, maybe Mark, if you have a different opinion on this, but sometimes I think that Kelsey Plum realizes or has this feeling in herself, like as the game is going, that she's not getting enough, like she's not putting up enough shots. And so you have those situations where she'll just like force a drive to the basket over and over and over again, and she's not getting calls, and there's wide open girls like on the 3-point line or in the mid-range. She misses Asia a couple of times, but then there's games like on Sunday when Kelsey Plum has 26 points and you don't know, but it wasn't like a meaningful 26 points, because it's like she had 26, but you like that, but we don't get that all the time. And that's the most frustrating part for me anyway about Kelsey Plum's game, is that we could get that so much more if we were playing so much more efficient basketball.
It's interesting because I thought I texted one of my friends who's a scout after that game, and I was like, that like, if you just, because kind of in a way, like you said, I was like, if you just read the box score, you would think Kelsey was like just about the best player in the game. And the first half was like very much not like that. She had a couple of shots where I was like, I think what's tough, because the way I would characterize it, Kelsey is very much a rhythm player. Like, if she feels in rhythm, if she feels good, she's going to take it. And I think that's one of the things that is so important about her game, honestly. Like, in order to be an incredibly high volume player who works through, like, she will have some of the straight. Like, it feels like Jackie is always even keel and like doesn't. It just feels like if she misses one, she's going to make the next one, right? I feel like Kelsey goes through like lulls a little bit and works through them. And I think her decision-making and stuff has continued to improve over from, last year into this year. But that definitely happens sometimes in the offense. But I think part of what's tough is like, okay, well, we're gonna take the times where she goes, 1 of 5 with the turnover in a quarter for when she goes, absolutely nuclear in another quarter, scores 13 points,
Right.
throws 2 amazing cross court skips. Like that's the stuff you take when you have an offense that empowers people to play with pace and confidence. And I think what I really liked so much about Kelsey's game is, especially in that second half, she was just awesome moving off the ball. Like she's always a really good off-ball mover, but I thought in that second half, again, part of what made that entire group so lethal is like I thought they did more than enough to like just hang above water when he was on, but when they had AC at the 4, their ball movement, like the Liberty just looked screwed. They were like, we cannot keep up with this. And again, part of that was just I thought their overall awareness defensively was pretty poor. But the way that they moved the ball, moved their bodies was like that was like a 130 offensive rating, if not better. And that's crazy. But that's just how good that Aces team is. So I think it's, I totally hear what you're saying, but I think it's one of the things that you just kind of live with because the good games are so good, man.
Yeah, but it's like Chelsea Gray is running the show. She's not making so many mistakes, and she's producing offense by scoring and assisting. Jackie Young, like you said, she's even keeled. She's just doing a little bit of everything. I mean, God, we've heard Becky Hammond say it. This team is inspired by the 2014 Spurs. I got a video dropping tomorrow talking about it. It flashed before my eyes. I'm like, wait, crafty point guard that scores and assists, lefty scorer who's a little risky, Manu, right? Takes risks, but you can't stop him once he gets going. You're a two-way athlete, guard, wing, perimeter, Kawhi, Jackie Young, and the all-time great power forward. This is the 2014 Spurs. It's all there. It's literally, I'm like, wait, position by position. I'm like, wow, that really is how they're inspired, what they're inspired by. But that's why you can live with it because Kelsey Plum is a scorer. And score, like when you're a scorer, every time you have the ball, you feel like you can score.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's in front of you. I work on this all the time. It doesn't matter what we're running, like you said, Mark, rhythm. Guess what? Players like Kelsey Plum, when she has that ball, she's in rhythm. She's ready to get a bucket any time. She's on a team where she's not shooting volume. She's not shooting 20 plus shots a game, but she's in a role where they still need her offense. So that's a thing that I'm always interested by with scorers like her who are in these somewhat minimal roles. She's on a team with other stars, right, where she has to be efficient, but also has to be high volume and get going when they need, because they still need her offense. That's part of what makes them unstoppable. If one of them drop off, if Chelsea or Kelsey or Jackie drop off even a little bit, that's what makes them a little vulnerable, right? Unless Asia's going for 30 and 15 or whatever, right? But if their 3 guards are all hitting, no one's stopping that.
No, that's such a great point because I think like that's my thing. I just like what team has the personnel to guard all 3 of those guards when they're on? No one.
It's like Mark, and they don't all have to be hitting at the same time. Chelsea can run the first quarter. Kelsey can run the third quarter. Jackie can get out the set. I mean, it doesn't even have, if they're all hitting at the same time, then just go home. Forget about it,
Yeah.
Like,
No,
even
exactly.
if one is off, if 2 are off, they're still good money. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And just to throw a quick stat too, because like your point about coaches being like, oh, Jackie's settling, like if shooting 41.6% per synergy on off the dribble threes is settling, I will take that. Like that is because that's what's so difficult about guarding Jackie, because I get a team being like, well, we're just going to give her the pull-up 3. Right. She is too good. The release is too fast. She is too comfortable. And then like the stat you pulled for me, like she's shooting at a level at the rim where it's like you just can't let that happen. Okay, well, if she gets in to the mid-range, she's so comfortable getting to the rim or making the right read that she's either going to get fouled. She should get fouled more. She deserves more foul calls, 100%. But like it's just a quandary. I don't know what else you do about it. And I think like kind of like you mentioned, if things can slow down a little bit, I feel a little bit more comfortable about the Liberty being able to do it. And I'm going to be interested to see how they do that. But yeah, man, I think this is, to me, that's my biggest takeaway from that game is just credit to Jackie Young, because what a performance.
She took over. To me, bro, it's Kayla Thornton, like you said, and it's a little more zone. I think they had a few good zone possessions.
Yeah.
I think a little more zone. I think you gotta go to it a little bit more, see what happens. I don't think it's the answer, but I do. And some of those minutes that Kayla Thornton, all of the 4 minutes she was in, there were a couple of those possessions were zone possessions when she was in, and I liked their awareness, their alertness, like you keep talking to. Some of their best possessions, I thought defensively easily, were with Kayla Thornton on the floor.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I really like the point you made about their zone. I thought they made some really good things happen out of it. But then it's like, okay, well, part of it was like Becky did a phenomenal job in, especially like it's the kind of thing you don't really think about while watching. But I thought on rewatch, like Becky did a phenomenal job in how she handled subbing AC and Kia. I thought like it never really felt like the Liberty were able to put together a run in the second half, I should say. Like obviously in the first half, Marine went crazy. But then they guarded her extremely well. They denied everything she went for in the second half. But it just felt like every time the Liberty started to maybe like, all right, well, we're going to solve this. It's like, all right, well, here's Alicia Clark, and here's a completely different look. Good luck. And then we're not going to drop off at all defensively. So it's like, it's just tough. I don't know. Again, I think it becomes more for me like, how can Liberty make this about them instead of how do they handle matching up with the Asics? Because I think the worst thing you can do is trying to match up with them because you can't. So
one of my keys was 3-point shooting, Marcus, and they both teams hit 9 threes. That's not Liberty have got to win the 3-point battle in one of these games, I think, to win. That's got to be one of their strengths.
I would say so. I think, and again, this has been my big point, and I did poke slight fun of it last week on the show, but someone needs to figure out a way. And I know we talked about it earlier, but someone needs to figure out a way to play defense in the backcourt. We watched Tiffany Hayes headhunt Sabrina Ionescu during their series against the Sun. I watched Jackie Young headhunt Sabrina Ionescu in Game 1 on Sunday afternoon, and it resulted in 26 points. I don't know. I don't know. I know for a fact that defensively, the answer is not defense in the backcourt because Sabrina's not a good defender. She's not going to be. She cannot out physical Jackie Young. She's not going to be able to stop Jackie Young from getting to her spot. She won't be able to stop Chelsea Gray from getting to her spot because no one can stop Chelsea Gray from getting to her spot. But to your point, Martin, Sabrina Ionescu is a 3-point shooter. She is the reigning 3-point contest winner. She set the record for most threes in a single season. She needs to be the one to ignite things from the 3-point line because, as we've seen throughout the course of the season and in the playoffs, when Sab is hitting from the 3, it makes everything so much easier. It makes Courtney so much more dangerous when she drives in and kicks out to pass to a wide open Sab because you can't help but crash in on Courtney when she's driving down the paint. It makes Stewie that much more dangerous when she's open from the mid-range. It makes Jonquil Jones that much more dangerous. Like the key to success, and I don't even want to give all this love to the Liberty because I want to see them lose, but the key to success for the Liberty, especially in Game 2, is being able to hit the 3, and that starts with Sabrina Ionescu.
I will say this, Mark. I will say this. Sabrina responded against Washington. Natasha Cloud called her out. Headhunt. She responded. After the Tiffany in Connecticut, she responded. Game 2, she went to the basket more. She got more looks in the paint. She opened things up for her. I saw her respond in both of those first 2 series. So I'm giving her the benefit. I'm saying I've seen her respond now. So I'm even more interested to see if she can respond here because we've seen her do it the last 2 series.
And I have no doubt that she's going to respond because we've seen her respond those last 2 series, of course.
Yeah, I think what's going to be really interesting because I agree. And I think, again, it's just a lot of credit to the Aces for how well they defended her. I think part of what was really exciting about watching what Marine did in that second quarter is that was to me, that was the key because like you saw so much in there for what, like everything for the Liberty's offense is about movement. Like you mentioned, the downhill drives from Courtney set everything up, but their ability to set up movement off the ball and then everything out of that is how they get things going. Because part of what was so great about that is like, all right, well, we had Marine got open 3 or 4 times. She got hot and then the Aces adjusted. And what's important about that is, okay, that opens something up for us. Can we make something happen off that? I thought what was so good about the Aces, like they defended that incredibly well after they started to change it up. They forced Marine into a couple turnovers. Marine also had a couple nice plays off of it as well, but it's like same idea of getting that with Sab, right? Like you need to get that going. I think the biggest thing is getting Courtney downhill though. Like the Aces did a fantastic job, particularly in the second half, keeping her out of the paint, going under on everything. And I kind of was a little bit surprised that the Liberty didn't go to more of what they did against the Sun in this. Like obviously against the Sun in that game one, they just said, okay, we're going under every screen. We're squeezing the hell out of every screen. We're not giving you a driving lane. And she couldn't really make anything happen out of it. Everything was contested for the team. So then next couple games, they do a lot more of, all right, let's do like high post pitches to her. So it's like getting her downhill on a drive, but without using the screen. And then it's way harder to guard. Right. I think that's where they're going to go to, just based on what the last series was like. And it'll be interesting to see how the Aces try and counter that. But I think to me, she is the biggest part, because if they cannot create easy offense, she is their way to create an easy offense. She is the player who can get downhill out of a ball screen like that and open things up, because then once they get the movement going, that's how you get Sabrina going downhill. That's how you get easier shots for everyone else. And I'll be interested to see how that plays out, because I think especially as well, like John Quell played really well in the first quarter, but then Asia locked the hell out of the paint. And they did a really good job on secondary rotations too. They made it impossible for her to bring the ball down and then back up, because when JJ doesn't have to put the ball on the floor, she is like unguardable. When she does have to put the ball on the floor, it can totally stall the offense out. So again, I think it's a lot of that's just going to be, can they get all the initial drives going to open up their movement and get everybody comfortable from there?
Now I want to ask you a question, Mark, and I think I've kind of, at first, I think Martin was with me, and then I think the more I talked about it, it kind of annoyed Martin just a little bit. But again, I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, but everyone at this point knows that the boot is off and the scooter's gone, and she was on the sideline during game one. Obviously, game two is tomorrow night. We have not heard an announcement yet. We probably won't hear one, but the fan in me can hope. Right, Martin earlier talked about how there's only one team that can stop the Aces, and that is the Liberty. But if I'm not mistaken, in the 4 games that the Aces and the Liberty played in the regular season, Candace Parker didn't play in any one of those 4 games. If Candace Parker comes back, does that heavily tilt the scales, in your opinion, in the Aces' favor and drastically increase the likelihood of them repeating as champions this year?
So I could be wrong. I know Candace played the first game, because they played like
she did play the first game. You're right. They played the first game.
But point being, like, I think it's interesting because it brings in a really interesting dichotomy of like, I think like obviously it's Candace Parker. You're going to bring her back. Like there's no question on it. Like she is there because she wants to win championships and be great. But just from like the actual point of like, how do we get this player in rhythm when they haven't even played in the playoffs, when they haven't played since the All-Star break? Like that's hard. I think you can look at the just point blank period on top of doing everything from a talent standpoint and be like, yeah, well, of course that makes sense. Like Kia Stokes, amazing defender, but it can be hard to keep our heads above water with her on offense if things get gummed up. With Candace, it's just different. Like she brings what she brings as a passer from the high post and as a ball handler, somebody who can push the pace in transition. Like that just okay. Because on the other hand, it's like, all right, well, it creates this other bag of worms that the Liberty have to deal with too. And then, hey, she's like one of the 5 best defenders in basketball. So, but again, I think what's tough is like, what level is she at if she comes back? I would love to see her in the series just because I love watching Candace Parker play basketball. Who wouldn't want to see her play? But it would be, I mean, it just would be so interesting to see how that plays out.
I love the theory. Marcus had this theory that they were like keeping it quiet and they were going to.
So I did. I was.
Yeah. I did feel like I know how good the Aces are without her. They just won last year without her. I know how great they are. And I knew just toe to toe, I felt like Aces Liberty. I'm like, that's even. Let's see that. And I think that's the only team that could take them out. My thing was like, without Candace Parker, like now after game 1, I'm like, all right, I'll give it up. They don't need her. They don't need Candace Parker to beat the Liberty. I get it. They snuffed me out on that because I was thinking, I'm like, if without Candace, they're probably a little vulnerable against a team like the Liberty. They might need her. Now I'm of the mindset, Marcus and Mark, that, and it depends on what Candace is feeling like, what she's doing, but if they're about to repeat without her, I don't know how many games she played, but she barely played. She didn't have to play in the playoffs at all. If they're about to repeat, she gonna run it right back for that three-peat. She did just run it right back. Bring her back. Let's make history. Okay, we didn't really get this one, but it's different than Aaron Rodgers missing the whole season with the Jets. The Jets ain't doing nothing over there. No. They might actually still win it without her. Everybody was complaining about super team, the Candace, oh, it's unfair. They about to win it without her anyway. So you might as well bring it back, run it back, go for the dynasty, go for the three-peat with her. That's how I'm seeing it now.
And I would say too, and Martin and I had this conversation, Mark, during that time when there was like the lull of the season, I think they lost their first game to the Sun when Dewana Barner had like a career night and she set like a franchise record for points, and then they lost to the Wings not that far after that. And I texted Martin and I was like, it feels like the Aces are missing something. And then Martin said, yeah, they're missing Candace Parker. Because it was at the time like they were playing so many games in such a short period of time when they were doing like a lot of back and forth between home and away, and they were missing, like you mentioned, like the high post and the passing out of the high post. And one thing that I noticed is when Candace Parker was on the floor, those defensive switches and the things that the Aces love to do under Becky Hammond, especially in the zone, they weren't really able to do those things so seamlessly without Candace Parker early on in the season. Now, of course, they figured it out and they went on what they went on, and obviously, but Candace Parker to me is not a necessity. Of course, she is not a necessity. I feel confident that the Aces can get the job done without Candace Parker, but Candace Parker being present in this series, even if it's, let's say, 70% of what Candace Parker could be at her best, that still puts the Liberty, I think, in a very, very dire situation to the point where we're talking about a series that should go 5. Like, if she plays and they keep playing how they've been playing, like, this series could be over in 3 or 4. And this great Liberty team doesn't look that great in this series. Again, the fan of me would love to see Candace Parker play basketball in this series because, like you said, who doesn't want to see Candace Parker play basketball? But it's crazy to think that, especially after that lull of the season and to get to where they are now, that, like Martin said, they don't need Candace Parker to win this series.
Yeah, I will say, though, to the Liberty's credit, they have been phenomenal with game 1 to game 2 adjustments. Mm-hmm. So I think tomorrow is going to be, it's just going to be absolutely key to see how it plays out because you'll be having a very different conversation after tomorrow night. So I'm interested to see what that looks like.
We will. We'll be having a very different conversation after tomorrow night. I do want to, Mark, super quickly before we get out of here, I want to ask you, and Martin, you as well. Mark, who do you have winning tomorrow? And who do you think is going to win the whole thing?
Yeah, I have the Aces winning tomorrow. I think if I had to make my pick today, I would probably have Aces in 4. This is just my feel off of game 1. Could well be wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times, but that would be my guess off of this.
For the sake of my pick, I got the Liberty bouncing back in game 2. They got to play the game of their lives, but I think they're built for it, and I'm going Liberty in 5.
I so desperately want to say the Aces are going to win this game tomorrow because it puts a very interesting dynamic and a very interesting like aura over game 3 when they go to Barclays. But I've let my Aces bias get me in trouble one too many times about this series, so I'm going to take the Liberty tomorrow. Officially, but unofficially, I want the Aces to win, of course. Mark, do you have any last closing words before we get out of here?
No, man. I think I said my piece. I just I appreciate you guys having me on. This was really fun. I had a great time.
Man, Mark, we appreciate you, man. As you know, us males who understand the value and the beauty of the women's game, we gotta support each other and collaborate with each other and high five each other and all that good stuff. But we appreciate you for what you're doing in the space and the way you're doing it. You were selected carefully, and I really wanted to connect with you. So we really appreciate you coming through, man, and we hope to have you on again sometime for sure.
No, I'd absolutely love to. And I appreciate the kind words, guys. This was a blast.
Absolutely. I do have one question. It wasn't on the flow. It just came to me.
Mhm.
Martin's given his comments to women's basketball haters. I have given my notorious comments to women's basketball haters.
Oh yeah.
Mark, is there
Talk your
if
talk,
there
Mark.
is if right now
Talk
that
your
you
talk,
could
Mark.
say to men, women, whoever who do not respect and do not like the game of women's basketball, what would that be?
Man, it's lame. I think I used to get mad about it all the time, and I still do. But I think to me, it's just basketball, man. Like if you can't sit down and enjoy Aces Liberty, or getting to go watch Notre Dame, South Carolina in a month, or any of the great matches we're gonna see, like that's on you, man. Like that, I can't. I'm gonna have a fucking blast watching it. So if you're gonna miss out, that's your decision. I think it's incorrect, but it's just basketball, and it's damn good basketball. So,
Mark, just real quick, I'm sorry because I really meant to ask you this first. How did you get in? What like? Why do you like women's basketball so much? Like, what drew you to it, and even basketball in general? Like, what's your connection to basketball? I need to know that.
yeah. So I was yeah, that's a long story.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. I was working to be a professional boxer. That's what I really wanted to do in life. When I was originally in school, was doing both at the same time. Was doing pretty well with the boxing aspect, not so much school. Then I had a career-ending injury. Ended up kind of on bed rest for not bed rest for a couple of months, but then I was mostly couldn't really exercise, do anything for about a year. So I went from watching TNT games every week to, all right, I'll watch 3 or 4 NBA games a night. And then that just turned into, like, I'd always kind of followed basketball. I was never really a high level player. It was always just kind of fun for me and in the background. So then I just kind of fell in love with it. It was something that I was able to enjoy. And I think I took a lot of the things that were bad about my athletic career, and I was able to just put it in a more positive light. With basketball, I went from somebody who never wanted to write or be a journalist to here I am now. And with the W, I just I interviewed for the job because I wasn't doing anything else with my summer other than going to summer league. Interviewed for the job to work for the W website. I thought I was just going to be doing some analysis pieces a couple times a week, and obviously watching a lot of basketball. And I'd been a casual fan. The first time I ever sat down to watch the W was the 2019 Mystics run. I watched them from the Sparks on up, and kind of fell in love with that team and really enjoyed that. But then I got really heavily invested last year. That was my first season really covering the league, and went from just doing, starting off kind of slow to obviously watching all the games and stuff, more just starting off just looking from watching the game, but then started doing features, starting to really connect with people. And I don't know, I think I just kind of fell in love with being on the women's side because I just got to know people more. And I think it's the most that I ever felt connected to things in sports in a way that I liked. And it stuck with me. And I don't have any intention of ever going away from it. It's been great.
Well, I can speak for basketball. I have that right. We love having you. I don't know how you went from boxing to knowing about squeezing screens and DHOs. And I mean, when I read how you write about basketball, you know what you're talking about, and you'd be surprised how many people don't know what they're talking about. But really, the way you're approaching this is I really appreciate it. You're a student of the game, and even students of the game aren't students out here, if you catch my drift. And it's just driving me crazy. But I appreciate your work, man. Seriously.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good button on the show. Again, Mark, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank all of you guys who tuned in. Thank you guys for tuning in live. For all the guys that will tune in either on YouTube or on any streaming platforms, thank you guys for tuning in the future. It was a pleasure to have the one and only Mark Schindler on the show. If you are not already, please make sure that you are following Protect Our Queens on Instagram at @ProtectOurQueens_. We post clips there. We have a lot of fun there. And we get into arguments with women's basketball trolls because, as Martin says, it's fun to troll the trolls. And so that's what we do. So, and then of course, once you've done that, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Give Us a Shot Network. because that's where you're going to find Protect Our Queens. We'll be right back here next Tuesday, same time, same place, with another great guest. Hopefully the Liberty can at least win one game so we can talk about the WNBA Finals next week. If not, then I'll be on the show bragging about how Asia Wilson's to go. That's neither here nor there, though. Thank you again, Mark, for coming on the show. And we appreciate all that you do and all of your efforts as you, just like we, continue to protect our queens. So for the one and only Mark Schindler and for my guy, Martin Soares, my name is Marcus. Thank you guys for watching in. And as always, you guys have a good night.